Greetings, St. Barnabas members and friends. We continue our reflections on the Lord's Prayer, and as we do, it occurred to me to offer, a kind of disclaimer of sorts. So, the Lord's Prayer began to be especially meaningful to me about 30 years ago, right around the time of my ordination. And since then, it has become pretty much the foundational mainstay of my prayer life. And as a consequence of that, I began to do some more extensive research and study, and then I began to teach on the Lord's Prayer. And so that's been a part of my ministry for some time. By the way, let me quickly say, I don't think of myself by any stretch as a scholar on the Lord's Prayer, just more a practitioner and a pastor and a learner. So a big part of that learning for me has been the realization of how open this prayer is. And by open, I mean it's open to many interpretations or understandings or experiences. And I think that's one of the things that has made it so powerful for the church for now 2 millennia. And that's true of much of Jesus's wisdom teaching. It has a way of being open to every sort of stage on the spiritual journey and every experience of our humanity. And so I offer these reflections as the fruit of my experience and my study and my teaching. But the last thing I would want to do is limit your experience of this prayer. In the main, my hope is to make it more available to you, not less so. So with that in mind, we come now to the third petition, let your will become, or let your will happen. And as we come to this petition, it starts, at least for me, it starts a movement from the opening address and the first 2 petitions that are all about God. And especially, as I've said repeatedly, I'll just name it briefly now, being rooted and grounded in God, and as that moves me out of my over preoccupation with my longings and my desires and my needs and my petitions, as it moves me out of that into resting in God, bringing me to peace. That's the beginning emphasis of this prayer, and especially the first word, Abba, that we would find ourselves in Abba. Then the prayer begins to move towards our partnership with God. Now, I've mentioned that previously, but more and more, it begins to move into our partnership with God and affecting God's will on the earth. And so this petition, let your will happen, or let your will become. Now, this again, it's very interesting, the importance of Greek word order. It actually names as in heaven first. So let your will happen as in heaven, also on earth. So that it starts with as in heaven is one sort of final grounding in here we are in our God, in eternity, in the heavens, as we are there with our God, where the will of God already is, and we are invited to be there and come to peace there. Then we are moved, we are called to move out into the earth and let that will happen on the earth as it happens in heaven. And the whole notion of on earth is rich for me. It has many layers. I remind us that we are nothing but the dust of the earth. You are nothing but the dust of the earth, taken from the dust of the earth, formed in the image of your God. And in that image is a divine innate goodness that is you, is the true you, your true self, formed of the earth in the image of God. And as a creature formed of the earth, you are in solidarity with the whole earth itself. The Psalms say this repeatedly. The whole earth tells of the glory of God. One of the psalmists says, you formed me in my mother's womb. You knew me as you formed me from the earth. And St. Paul especially says this. The whole creation groans and travails, waiting for the manifestation of the children of God. That is, we are created from the earth and on behalf of the earth, placed in it by God to nurture and tend and care for the earth. And so, again, the marvelous thing that can happen here is that as we come to peace, as we become free of distress, rooted in our God, in eternity, right here, right now, we become more and more in touch with the truth of our createdness, created in the image of God and gifted, each one of us uniquely gifted as creatures formed of the dust of the earth to be the servants of God on the earth, in the earth, and bringing God's will, affecting the will of God on the earth, in the earth, through our creatureliness, through our being created uniquely and differently and marvelously with each one of us, with all manner of giftedness. And one of the great gifts of coming to peace is to begin to realize I am who God has made me to be just as I am. God calls me to just be me, not to have to accomplish anything great, not to have to be any different than I am, not to want to be like so-and-so or be like somebody else, but just be me. And in that, in the peacefulness of that, realize that I am gifted. And as we come to peace and as we come rooted in God and filled with the Spirit, we find ourselves inspired to go be ourselves in the world in all the particulars of my life, all the particulars of your life, to just be you in this situation and that situation. Be you, calm and peaceful, and watch your gifts emerge. Watch your creativity. Watch your humility. Watch your gentleness. Watch your fun and your jovialness and your insightfulness. Watch it go to work and bear fruit and bring about openness to God's presence. Bring about peace and light and life in whatever circumstance you're in as God's creature, innately gifted, created in God's image, uniquely gifted to be God's presence in the earth. And so I commend this to you, and I in the next few days we'll watch how this prayer matures even more in this direction, that we are praying for our empowerment to bring about the holiness of God, the presence of God, the will of God upon the earth.